Hello everybody and welcome back to Fellowship Games. Dakota here, and today we're going to be looking at Rakdos Scourge in Historic. The goal of the deck is to take advantage of Scourge of the Skyclaves, and the way we're looking to do that is kind of taking a blend of the mono black aggro decks we see in Historic already and then mixing it with the Rakdos Young Pyromancer Lurrus decks. We're starting off with the namesake of the deck, Scourge of the Skyclaves. Its power and toughness are each equal to 20 minus the highest life total, so we've seen how good this can be in Modern in Death Shadow's deck, but unlike its Death Shadow counterpart where you only have to manage your own life total, because that's the easy part, right? Managing your own life total with Thoughtseize and then all of the mythic modal lands that we can lightning bolt ourselves. We have to do kind of the dance of balancing our life total and the opponent's, so that's kind of like what the rest of the deck is aimed towards. It also has a kicker ability, but we're never casting this. Rarely ever are we going to be casting this for 7 mana. This is just going to be a 2 mana, hopefully like, you know, a 3/3/4/4 early on. So like we said, we're trying to do this dance between balancing our life total and our opponent's. Fortunately, it's really easy for us to hurt ourselves. We have ways to take advantage of the modal lands from Zendikar Rising. With Aghanim's Awakening and Shatter Skull Smashing, we're easily able to deal ourselves 3 damage and potentially even 5 very early if we do, you know, let's say Aghanim's Awakening as Aghanim, the Undercrypt, untapped, and then Thoughtseize on turn 1. That's already 5 life we've lost. So then we have to move on to how are we dealing damage to the opponent? The fastest way we do this is with our early aggression, and that's where Bolmac Courier and Soulscar Mage come into play. Soulscar Mage works very well with our cheap interaction with Prowess, as we've seen play out in the modern versions of this deck. And then Bolmac Courier is very good as a haste threat. It can come in right away, start chipping away at the opponent's life, and of course we can, you know, sack it later, discard our hand, refuel if we've gone a couple attacks in to help us go through the late game. To help our creatures do their things, we have plenty of cheap interaction and disruption. The most notable one here is Thoughtseize. As we talked about earlier, the fact that we lose 2 life is an upside for this deck, and being able to pick apart our opponent's hand to take, you know, threats that our removal spells can't really deal with, and especially their own removal, right? If we're able to protect our Scourge of the Skyclave, it can run away with the game if we give it some help. We also have Shock as the other best way to handle the opponent's life total. We can just throw it upstairs, start keeping the life loss on par with our own. We also have Feed the Swarm for additional removal. This can kill any creature, and we lose life equal to its converted mana cost. So depending on the size of this creature, this could make our Scourge of the Skyclave absolutely massive, depending on the life total situation. And it's also good main deck enchantment removal, something that, you know, Black didn't have until now. And then lastly, we have Spikefield Hazard. I have them in there as a 2 of, sneaking them into the mana base, mostly to act like, you know, a mini shock when we need to, help against the Jund Sacrifice decks by having a good exile spell. You know, I could pick off a cat if they don't have an oven or something. And then something that can answer Uro, because the fact that Uro is still escaping around Historic is a problem for this deck. We also have 2 copies of Fatal Push to answer early aggressive plays from the opponent. We can activate Revolt pretty easily to scale into the mid game with Fabled Passage in the mana base and sacrificing Bolmac Courier. The next category we have is what I call the double duty MVPs, and that's Bonecrusher Giant and Kroxa Titan of Death's Hunger. Why I say these do double duties, because they act as interaction and disruption, but they're also threats on their own. So we have Bonecrusher Giant that can, you know, we can play as Stomp to do anything that we need a shock to do. It's also pretty cool. We can have damage be able to not be prevented. And then it comes down as a 4/3 with a very relevant taxing ability. Forcing the opponent to pay 2 life every time they want to answer it just plays right into our game plan. And then Kroxa, this isn't a Kroxa deck like the Young Pyromancer deck is. We're not playing Citrus Supplier and, you know, any milling effects, but we fill the graveyard pretty quickly with just all the cheap interaction we play, you know, like Shock, Thoughtseize, attack with our 1/1, they remove it, whatever. We can escape it pretty easily, and then we can apply a lot of pressure to their hand if we're pressuring them with Thoughtseize and then playing this and then escaping it and then start attacking with it. We're gonna have the opponent running empty pretty easily, and these cards together give a very solid foundation to the deck. They give it its hard backbone and make sure we always have things to do. We're either escaping or, you know, casting Bonecrusher from the adventure zone. Very good. Moving on, we have our closers. So these are going to be the spells that help us close out the game when protecting our Scourge of the Skyclave plan doesn't really work. So first up, we have Spawn of Mayhem. This is very robust in our deck. It can come down for 3 with the Spectacle cost as a 4/4 flying trampler. And what's really good about this card is at the beginning of the upkeep, it deals 1 damage to each player. So it simultaneously manages our life total and the opponents. And then also, if we have 10 or less life, which is pretty easy to do, it gets a +1/+1 counter every single turn and can win the game itself. We also have Rankle, Master of Pranks. Rankle has proven itself as a very good standalone threat throughout its time in Standard, Pioneer, Historic. And the reason for that is because it does so many things, right? It can, if you're already behind on cards but head on board, you can have each player start discarding a card. If you need some more cards, you can have each player lose 1 life and draw a card. And then you can also have it as like a weird edict effect where, you know, you can have each player sacrifice a creature. What's really good about Rankle is so many times if you're constantly applying pressure, it's a good closer because you're going to have so many situations where your opponent is just dead to a top deck Rankle. It's going to come in, it has flying and haste, so it can just come in and end the game right away. Moving on to the sideboard, we have some extra removal. We have 2 copies of Bloodchief's Thirst to swap out with our Fatal Pushes as they scale into the mid game a little bit better. We also have 2 copies of Abrade to help us with the Tempered Steel decks and as additional creature removal. We have Duress for extra hand disruption in control matchups. And then we have Bedevil kind of as our catch-all, as it can go after an artifact, a creature, or a planeswalker. For different kinds of interaction, we have Claim the Firstborn. What I'm thinking with this is going to help us with the Orzhov Auras decks. Being able to steal like a massive core Spirit Dancer and then being able to throw it back in their face is going to help a lot if we weren't able to answer it early. And then we also have Witch's Vengeance to help us against tribal decks that go wide. Specifically, goblins is the thing we want to hit the most with this. But yeah, any deck, tribal deck that can go really wide is going to give us a hard time because our single Scourge of the Skyclave isn't going to really outpace it. Finish off, we have 1 copy of Ox of Agonas in the sideboard to help give the deck some extra card drawing power. And then we also have a single Soul Guide Lantern to help against graveyard decks. And then we have 2 copies of Roiling Vortex. It has a lot of play in spell slinging decks like Arc-like Phoenix and stuff like that. But the ability to shut down life gain is very important because the easiest way for the opponent to just straight up remove Scourge of the Skyclave is just to get above 20 life. So being able to have a repeatable way to shut that down every single turn is very important. That's going to do it for Rakdos Scourge in Historic. This deck was a lot of fun to make. I'm really looking forward to playing it. So comment down below if you want to see me stream this and tell me your thoughts about it in general. I have a lot of fun making these kind of videos and I want to keep doing them if they keep being well received. Thanks so much for watching the video. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Head over to Instagram and follow us to stay up to date with our posting schedules. Follow us on Twitch to see us streaming, and jump in our Discord to talk all things Magic, play Among Us, do whatever. Just hang out. This is Dakota. Thanks again for watching and joining the fellowship.